How can you? Forget about how for now. And do what I said. This is a bewildering array which can affect the perceptions of others inside. And this is also a killing array. Controlling wraiths to kill your enemies. Luo Yunchang copied stiffly as Zhou Fan performed the gestures. However, he was too fast. She could only watch him do it as she fumbled to a stop. Unable to remember the movements as he carried on. Stuck on the last sign she did. Sigh, how are you so slow? This is the simplest method. Zhou Fan got angry and cursed. If you keep going like this, Steward's son will be upon us. We might as well just serve ourselves on a silver platter. You're as slow as a pig. All her life, Luo Yunchang was handled with finesse and attention a pearl would need. She received others' love and respect. Never has she been mistreated like this. Degraded to such a degree. Glittering tears started welling in her eyes as she lowered her head. Yet, she persevered. Seeing his sister humiliated, he found courage and shouted at Zhou Fan. Stinky slave, don't mock my sister. Zhou Fan just shook his head. Not having the time to bicker with the brat. He found his yuan qi was only enough to start the array. Failing to control it, if one were to speak of a complete wraith array, even if none of them controlled it, a trash like Steward's son would end up beaten to a pulp either way. However, he only had around 1,000 spirit stones. If not for being a natural array, he wouldn't have been able to set even a damaged one. It was now in the hands of third-layer Qi condensation young miss to control the array. But for her, the method was long and complicated. It was hard to grasp. Worse, they were on the clock. Helpless, Zhou Fan embraced her from behind and took hold of her hands. What are you doing? Luo Yunchang froze up as her cheek blossomed with red. Don't move and let me guide you. Zhou Fan led her hands and taught her the signs. Despite catching his intent, being embraced by an unfamiliar man threw her heart in chaos and cheeks burned hotter. Since this was the first time it ever happened to her, each time her mind drifted, a voice would ring in her ear. Pay attention. She peeked at him and saw how serious Zhou Fan was. That his actions were not aimed to take advantage of her. Humph, he knows when to be a gentleman. Luo Yunchang calmed down and her body drew nearer to his, feeling the strong arm behind her. This was the first time in the last 3 days she felt safe. Steward's son. They went towards the misty forest. 10 miles outside the misty forest, a lanky bandit checked for tracks and reported to him. With cold laughter, Steward's son straightened his white mustache. Quite a good hiding place. We know the mountain area but not that eerie place. However, Steward's son looked at the bound captain and his eyes flash with an evil glint. Captain Peng, you're up soon. With how kind young miss is, she won't ignore your pleas. Pitui, don't think you can use me to threaten young miss. His eyes were bloodshot as he glared at Steward's son. You'd better kill me, or I will murder you and avenge my fellow guards. When I get the martial skill, I'll be happy to fulfill your wish. Squinting his eyes, Steward's son let out a creepy laughter. Let's go. It took an hour for their group of 20 to reach Misty Forest. Yet before they could get any closer, snoring came from a man sleeping against a tree. A careful look identified him as Zhou Fan. Steward's son, it's the one who killed the fatty. Woken up by the voice, Zhou Fan yawned and opened his weary eyes. Seeing Steward's son and company, he showed no fear, no anxiety. Instead, a smile. Steward's son, I've waited so long to see you. Frowning, Steward's son watched him. He eyed him with utmost care yet nothing seemed to tell him anything. He was just calm. What a deep-rooted schemer you are. I underestimated you, thought Steward's son. If it were any other time, he would have never paid attention to a servant. But ever since Steward's son witnessed Zhou Fan kill so brutally, Steward's son's image of him turned upside down. This punk not only hid deeply, but he's also ruthless. If he matures, only suffering awaits. Zhou Fan, you've quite the nerve to show off before me. Squinted Steward's son at him. Zhou Fan cut to the chase instead of replying. Steward's son, want to make a deal? What deal? I'll give you the Luo clan's young master and mistress. So, secure my career in Blackwind Mountain. What? Not only was Steward's son shocked, but even the guard captain was also dumbfounded. He rested his hopes on Zhou Fan to take the siblings far away. Who'd have thought? Zhou Fan would defect and use them as bargaining chips. Why are you doing this? Luo clan hasn't scorned you. Doubts arose in Steward's son's heart. HHHA. Then why do you? Luo clan treated you even better. Steward's son reddened at this and felt his rage boiling. As he calmed himself, Zhou Fan continued. Every man for himself. With how much the Luo clan has fallen, reviving it isn't something one man can do. Why should I walk towards my death? Using them to secure my life is but human nature. He picked the red rope from the ground who followed into the mist. Young Miss is at one of the ends of the rope. I left a few forks on the rope along the way that only I know about. Steward's son nodded as he grabbed it. Good plan. To use a rope to mark your way. And you even included forks to safeguard the right trail for yourself. A true double-crosser. HHHA. He gave the rope back. Deal. Lead the way. But don't even think of playing tricks. Steward's son. I am an honest man, smiled Zhou Fan. Steward's son sneered. I would have believed you before, but now, who would? The two locked their eyes, each laughing as their looks hid devious thoughts. The captain's hair stood on end. He kept cursing Steward's son as a rotten and vile human, while he barked at Zhou Fan as one who betrayed their master. Though everyone ignored him as he was escorted by other men as they ventured into the thick mist, the row of people stuck together and held on to the red rope as they walked through the mist. Zhou Fan went first with Steward's son right behind him, holding onto him with a firm grip on to prevent the boy from escaping. Because of the thick mist, one couldn't even see the figure of the one in front and relied on their hands to feel their neighbor. At the heart of the misty forest, where it was impossible for anyone to escape, Zhou Fan stopped. What is it? Steward's son was feeling apprehensive, tightening his grip on Zhou Fan's clothes. With a snicker, Zhou Fan said, Steward's son, we'll be pairing here. It's best if you travel the underworld river without me. With acute fear, Steward's son discovered he fell in Zhou Fan's trap. He pulled Zhou Fan close and slapped him. The clothes were turned to ribbons. But instead of Zhou Fan, they held a log. When did he escape? He'd been holding tight on Zhou Fan to prevent his escape. Yet reality showed the opposite. Turn back, quick. Steward's son rushed from where they came. As soon as he shouted, the men used the rope to retrace their path. But then, a shout came from the mist. The rope has been cut. It was as if lightning struck them and they all turned pale. How would they get out of this thick mist without the rope? Steward's son stomped as he gnashed his teeth. Blast it, that brat got us. Bring that damn Pang over. Steward's son, he's gone, bastard. Steward's son punched the ground and made a meter-wide hole in rage. He was a schemer himself. Yet he fell at the hands of a stinky brat. Damn punk, I've played this game longer than you. Don't think a puny misty forest can trap me. Steward's son roared towards the sky. Once I get out, I'll tear you to pieces. HHHA, you'll never have the chance. With Zhou Fan's mad laughter as the signal, the mist reddened. Why is the mist turning red? They were in shock by the sudden change. They were bandits that killed people for a living. Yet these strange circumstances had them on edge. Steward's son, you are wiser than most. Can you tell us what this is? Even though the bandit shouted, only silence echoed back. He felt around him yet touched no one. As if everyone around him vanished and left him all alone. He wasn't the only one. The people that hung on to the rope began to vanish one at a time. Steward's son could hardly believe what was happening. See, can this be an array? One as old as Steward's son has seen many things and experienced even more. Yet the more he knew, the more he realized how terrible arrays were, and fears grip his heart. An array worked using heaven and earth's energy. As long as a man controlled it, it could wipe out a dozen equal to him in power. Even if tens of experts gathered, they still could not measure to its power. Of all the possibilities he thought of, not once did he consider being trapped in an array. Zhou Fan, who exactly are you? Steward's son trembles from the feeling of dread. He saw at last that Zhou Fan wasn't just any ordinary man. How could a simple man know how to use or set up arrays? If Zhou Fan had taken out an array when they met, he wouldn't have had the nerve to chase him. Standing in the center of the array, Luo Yunchang was clear of the situation. Her eyes drifted to Zhou filled with intrigue. Squinting, Zhuo Yifan kept a cold and callous expression as he said, "Kill them." She followed his order by following his hand signs. The blood-red fog changed again, this time black, and swallowed all that laid within. Now they couldn't even see themselves. Only their ears picked the mournful wails of thousands of wraiths. With fear as their only companion, they lost all their will to resist once the black streams of energy started burrowing inside them. They felt their soul devoured yet were powerless to resist. All succumbed to terror at this point. Smirking, Zhuo Yifan's eyes shined with glee. He left Luo Yunchang and sat cross-legged in another center of the array. The 9 Serenities secret records stated that the demon transformation art user had a backdoor into all arrays. The men in the array were driven mad, and all he needed to do now was to absorb their yuan qi. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, 9 underworld wraiths return to me. Zhuo Yifan's hands moved as he stole the array from under Luo Yunchang's control while also making the clear figures of Steward Sun and the rest disappear from her mind. Luo Yunchang felt it odd and redo the signs to no avail. The misty forest was drowned with shrieks and wails. Steward Sun and the rest became pitch black but still had a sliver of awareness left as black shadows left their body. Each time one flew out, it evoked cries of torment as if pieces were ripped from its body. When the last shadow left, the cries stopped and so did their life. Their body dried up like a mummy and they turned to dust. In the darkness, the shadows returned like bees to Zhuo Yifan and entered his body. He accepted them with a calm face and soon his body turned black just like Steward Sun did. When the last shadow burrowed, he began doing hand signs to practice the demon transformation art. The still black yuan qi inside him boiled as it charged through his meridians and settled in his dantian. And his power grew with it. In an instant, he entered the 6th layer of foundation establishment. In the next instant, he was in the 7th. And then, he was at peak 7th layer. He kept going like this through the 8th layer. Then the 9th, until the peak of foundation establishment. He opened his eyes and took a deep breath as he clenched his hands, feeling the power course through him. This time, it wasn't as easy. The wraiths were almost spent when he demonified the yuan qi for himself. But with his experience as a veteran demonic cultivator, he understood that breaking through in a state of exhausted yuan qi holds much more value with his future progress. He clenched his teeth and operated the cultivation method. He sucked the wraiths dry and used the remaining yuan qi he had to make one final push. Bang! Zhuo Yifan heard something explode. He felt as if a dam broke and his body coursed with powerful yuan qi then settled in his dantian to replenish his spent reserves. This act of scraping for the last traces of energy enlarged his meridians by more than double. Qi condensation. Zhuo Yifan's eyes opened with glee. Even when he did this in his previous life, his meridians were nowhere near as wide as they were now. And the yuan qi in his dantian allowed him to face an expert at qi condensation. He was 3 times as powerful as before. He released a long breath and made some hand signs to release the wraiths. They turned back to gray and he went back to normal. When all wraiths were gone, Zhuo Yifan stood up and a single wave from his hands pushed away the black fog, allowing the sun's rays to land on the forest. He could now control the array himself, no longer needing Luo Yunchang's assistance. He showed a small smile as he looked at the sky. Now that I'm in the qi condensation, I can practice some martial arts. Despite the end of Steward Sun and his retinue of bandits, Zhuo Yifan had managed to free the Luo clan siblings. It could be said Zhuo Yifan benefited the most out of this. Without devouring Steward Sun, he would have never reached qi condensation. It was at this stage that he could practice martial arts. Later, not only could he defend himself, but also easier to devour others. Becoming stronger himself, Zhuo Yifan. A clear shout came from Luo Yunchang as she came over, embracing her brother. Meanwhile, the guard captain followed behind. Where did you run off to? Why did I lose control of the array? Perhaps there were too few spirit stones and the array collapsed. I just saw Steward Sun die. This is worthy of celebration. No one escaped, dodged Zhuo Yifan. He wasn't about to reveal his secret. Because in this world, demonic cultivators were strong. uncanny and cultivated with shocking speed. And his demon transformation art was even more monstrous. If others knew, he'd be a public enemy. This was why he died last time. So, for his second life, he made sure to avoid any mistakes. Luo Yunchang nodded, believing him. After some hesitation, Captain Pang toughened his resolve and kneeled. Brother Zhuo Fan, I was too reckless before, unaware of your plan, and still cursed you. If you must punish me, I will accept any that you might have for me. Even if you ask for my head, I will gladly offer it. Zhuo Fan nodded. Inside, Captain Pang was a loyal retainer. If Zhao Chen had this level of devotion, Zhuo Fan wouldn't have fallen so low. Sighing inside, he helped Captain Pang up. Captain Pang is a captain of the guards while I am just a mere servant. How could I receive such courtesy? Moreover, we have young Miss to thank for setting up an array to eliminate Stewart Sun's group. Luo Yunchang watched him, confused, only nodding when he threw Luo Yunchang a look. Although Luo Yunchang didn't know why Zhao Chen avoided admitting he was the one who set the array. He did save her and still deferred for her opinion. Captain Pang turned to Luo Yunchang in shock. Young Miss knows arrays? Luo Yunchang laughed, embarrassed, forced to admit it. Heaven protected the Luo clan. Young Miss knows arrays. Our rise is imminent. Captain Pang threw his head back and laughed. Exhilarated by the prospect, Zhuo Fan rubbed his nose. Luo Yunchang stole a glance at Zhuo Fan. If Luo clan is to rise, it's only thanks to this man. Zhuo Fan understood her and quickly said, now that we no longer have Stewart Sun breathing down our necks, what does young Miss intend to do next? We were planning on seeking shelter at Kai Manor. Captain Pang spoke before she could. This captain of the guards no longer treated Zhuo Fan as a common servant, but of equal status. You should know that Kai clan's young master has a marriage agreement with young Miss. Windgaze City's Kai clan? Zhuo Fan rubbed his chin, nodding. According to this body's memories, Kai clan was the best clan in the Windgaze City, of the same power as Luo clan. If he could hand over the Luo siblings to them, then the grudge would be settled and his heart demon lightened. Maybe it could even be dispelled. Zhuo Fan nodded at this thought. All right, let's go to the Kai clan. But not before he took one last look at Blackwind Mountain. Mumbling, I'll be back. At the same time, in a dark cave atop Blackwind Mountain, a malevolent youth was on a large seat. His eyes were filled with cruelty as they flicked to his subordinate. Any news of Stewart Sun? Reporting to young Lord. Stewart Sun said he'd soon have the martial art. The bandit was shaking like a leaf, fearing to even meet the youth's eyes. HHHA. Withdraw. Yes. The bandit wiped the sweat from his head, not lingering one moment more if he could help it. From fear of being eaten, the youth rose and moved behind the cover placed at the back of his seat. An old man laid there, glaring with fury at him. His lips trembled but no words came out. The youth patted the man's hand with a smile. Master, be at ease. Your friend left first and is waiting for you. Once returning Dragon Palm arrives, I will reunite you two old friends. The old man's eyes were bloodshot at this, as if wanting to eat him alive. Despite the constant trembling, he could do nothing else. In response, the youth's savage and vicious laughter echoed throughout the cave. Windgaze City was the largest city in 100 miles and a 10-day journey from the Luo clan. From fear of other bandits pursuing them, Zhuo Fan and the others sped up and reached it in 5. Once inside, the bustling of the city assaulted them while also bringing some comfort. All the tension accumulated over these past days seemed to seep from them. Now that she was finally around other people, Luo Yunchang's strained face finally revealed a smile. Yunhai, look there, pulling his hand. She pointed at a juggling stall. Captain Pang was happy to know the fall of the young Miss clan didn't put a damper on her spirits. Brother Zhuo Fan, I seem to recall you never came to Windgaze City. Zhuo Fan just nodded. Captain Pang was stunned at that. Windgaze City's bustle was famous around these parts. He recalled the last time he came here and was so excited he couldn't sleep for 3 nights. Why was it that a homegrown kid who never saw the flourishing city didn't even flinch? Of course, how could he know? In Zhuo Fan's eyes, this place was no different than a village. Old Pang, is Kai clan far from here? Sharing hardships brought them closer and even started calling each other brothers. Luo Yunchang spoke before Captain Pang could. We don't need to go so quickly. I and Yunhai must make an official visit first. Then I will come see you. Stay at a tavern in the meantime. So annoying, frowned Zhou Fan. With a bitter smile, Captain Pang just shrugged. Can't be helped. There's no one rushing us now. If we go there now, they will laugh at us for not showing propriety. Fine, you go first, Zhou Fan sighed, but nodded, as long as the siblings were safe and he gained his freedom. Waiting for a bit more wouldn't hurt. After 5 days of silence, someone couldn't restrain their temper and began running his mouth. Humph, stinky slave, Windgaze City is my sister's domain. Just you wait, see how I'll deal with you. Luo Yunhai crossed his arms and flared his nostrils, becoming the same old impertinent young master from before. Bam! He didn't get to enjoy it though. As Zhou Fan delivered a healthy kick to his rear, he flew a meter and landed on his face. No need to wait, let's settle this now. Luo Yunchang rushed to help her brother and glared at Zhou Fan. Why do you always pick on a child? It's your brother who needs a spanking. Zhou Fan shot her a look then waved. Go already, after you settle in. If you still look at me with such discontent, I will not hesitate to leave you. Luo Yunchang snorted and left while hugging her brother. Luo Yunhai rested his head on her shoulder, face red as if choking but not daring to make a peep. Even a child like him understood the two siblings had no power in the forest and suffered at the hands of that despicable and dastardly servant. But now that they were in Windgaze City, his sister's turf, it didn't seem to make much difference. Why am I getting beaten by that damn slave again? Does this slave fear not even heaven and earth? Luo Yunhai never saw anyone like him in the Luo clan. Captain Pang watched this unfold with shock to say the least, as his eyes were close to popping. Not even he knew Zhou Fan was so daring and impertinent that he'd beat up the young master right in front of young Miss. Yet she did not make a complaint nor retaliate. Young Miss dotted on her brother, never once being harsh with him. Yet Zhou Fan trampled over young master with no regard to her with uncanny ease and skill. Now he understood why young master looked at Zhou Fan like a mouse eyeing a cat. Wiping the sweat off his forehead, Captain Pang said, Brother Zhou Fan, young master is your lord. If not out of respect for the young miss, do it out of respect for her husband. How could you kick him? Zhou Fan laughed then shrugged. No one was a lord in his eyes. Everything he did was to remove the heart demon. They won't come back for a while. Let's stroll around the city. Zhou Fan turned around and walked away. Captain Pang knew he didn't take his words to heart and sigh as he followed. They were soon in the market area. This was where rogue cultivators sold their wares, to exchange items or other cultivating materials. With Zhou Fan's experience, he should be able to find goods which others overlooked. The two visited many stalls. And many times, Captain Pang wanted to put his hands in his pocket. But when he saw Zhou Fan walking away with a dull look, he followed suit. Perhaps he wasn't aware, but the Grand Captain of the Guard was reduced to following Zhou Fan at every step. Since when did the world overflow with overlooked treasures? Let's just go. Zhou Fan scoured the market but nothing caught his eye. It was then he heard a ruckus. He went to see a stall owner and a red-faced girl in a heated dispute. He led Captain Pang through the crowd's center and saw the girl's appearance. She wore white clothes, with fine eyebrows like a crescent moon and looked calm and gentle. Even when yelled at, she never lost her smile as if she never got angry. She persevered despite opposition. This black jade is fake. How is it fake? This is the purest black jade. One that if left in the sun for a day, will still feel cool to the touch. If worn as a pendant, cultivation will be much easier. The man spat non-stop about how pure it was. Young miss, do you understand what I'm saying? She shook her head, but her smile never faltered. I do not know much about black jade, but I have seen one so I can tell this one's a fake. HHHA, you saw it once and dare to say you find this one fake? Did you hear, everyone? Has there ever been such an absurd situation in the world? It has, and I know I'm right. If we talk about price, the worst black jade is worth 10 spirit stones while the best 100. Yet yours is only 3 spirit stones. Get out of here. Enough with your rubbish. Little girl, don't ruin my business. How could you possibly know of its value? The girl smiled while staring at the man. He felt a rage burning inside, but had nowhere to vent. As the saying goes, you can't strike one who only smiled. The girl kept denying the black jade's price without a solid reason. If it was any other person, he would have slapped them silly. But her smile left him powerless to even lift his hand. That black jade is indeed fake. A man's voice echoed out and the crowd saw Zhuo Yifan watching the girl with a smile. Young Miss eyes are true, but cannot explain where the fault lies. As everyone knows, reality is a matter of perception. What's real can be fake and what's fake can be real. The girl was taken aback but nodded while scrutinizing him. Zhuo Yifan turned to the crowd. Everyone, is it possible to prepare a few things? Sulfur, clover, he enumerated some of the most common things. And some people already bought them. Under everyone's eyes, Zhuo Yifan threw them in water, stirred, and said to the stall owner, "Please place the black jade inside." "Humph, you're just washing it." He was also confident, even as he placed it inside. But once it entered, the water began to bubble and turn red. It even released a faint hint of blood energy. How can it be? The stall owner was shocked. The girl also watched wide-eyed, astonished. HHHA. No need to be so surprised. This black jade was just an imitation that will show its real color once introduced to water. Zhuo Yifan took the black jade and gave it to the owner. "Now you should know this lady was right. That bastard lied to me. He sold it to me for 20 spirit stones." The stall owner gnashed his teeth. "This black jade is only worth 3 spirit stones." The girl declared her assessment then smiled to Zhuo Yifan. "Mr. has good eyes. I knew it was fake, but couldn't pinpoint the difference. I thank Mr. for his intervention. It was nothing. I have also seen this once." Zhuo Yifan smiled. "Young miss, won't you buy it? It's just 3 stones now." "No need. I only wanted to inform others of the stone's real price." She chuckled and left, watching her figure fading into the crowd. Captain Pang sighed next to Zhuo Yifan. "What an odd girl." Zhuo Yifan, on the other hand, breathed out relieved as he muttered, "That girl's eyes are sharp and sinister. It's a good thing she is still inexperienced, or she would have taken the treasure without hesitation." He then turned to the black jade, eyes shining with excitement, but the stall owner was sighing as he packed his things. "Ready to go home? Never thought I'd make a mistake." The stall owner was carrying his bag while walking along a remote alley. He didn't talk, just sighed as he walked. But then a voice came from behind. "Owner, please wait." He stopped with a startle and looked to see Zhuo Yifan walking over. "You're the one from before?" He recognized Zhuo Yifan. It was him who showed everyone his black jade was fake. "Is there something you need?" HHHA. "Owner, I like your black jade and will pay 10 spirit stones for it." Zhuo Yifan laughed, taking glances at the man's bag. After some muttering, the owner looked oddly at Zhuo Yifan. "Mister, you know this stone is fake. So why pay 10 spirit stones?" The lady said it was worth 3. Shaking his head, Zhuo Yifan added, "Even if it is fake, it can still pass off for the real thing. I might be able to sell it as a black jade." "Oh, I see. You want to trick others into buying it." The owner nodded in understanding then scanned around. "Since this is the case, things are different now. It is worth much more than just 10 spirit stones. How much do you want then?" Zhuo Yifan squinted with murderous intent. "At least 50. The owner showed his own sneaky side. "If not, I'll just find my own target and sell it at 100. Thanks to Zhuo Yifan reminder, the owner realized how rare were people who could tell the real black jade from fake. He could sell the fake himself and earn a fortune. "Are you buying, or do I have to look elsewhere?" Seeing Zhuo Yifan expression, the owner knew he didn't have that many spirit stones on him. But it was fine since he could sell it himself and dupe another in the process. He walked away. Wait. The moment he took the first step, a hand grabbed his shoulder like an iron claw, eliciting a shout of pain from the owner. "Owner, don't be too greedy," Zhuo Yifan warned. "Humph, so what if I am? The black jade is mine and I'll sell it at whatever price I want." His voice choked as a black yuan qi entered his body. After his body turned black, a breeze scattered his dust into the wind. Releasing his breath, Zhou Fan felt his yuan qi grow a bit. He was a first-layer qi condensation expert. The seventh-layer foundation establishment owner hardly helped in increasing his power. He just wanted to trade. But the owner had to be ruthless and force his hand. Zhou Fan took the black jade and returned to the tavern. He wasn't addicted to killing. But some people were addicted to courting death. Zhou Fan met with Captain Pang at the tavern and threw him a pouch. Old Pang. Here. Captain Pang didn't understand. The 10 spirit stones are all here? Didn't you buy it? Zhou Fan left Captain Pang at the tavern after borrowing 10 spirit stones, saying he found something that caught his eye. Yet the same spirit stones were left in the bag, untouched. Oh, that old man was so nice, he just gave it to me. Zhou Fan dodged. Also, old Pang, guard my door and don't let anyone come in. With that, he closed the door to his room. Captain Pang found it strange. But since they were like brothers now, he helped him out. As such, he sat before Zhou Fan's door as a guard. Zhou Fan was clear as to what happened beyond his door and nodded. Pleased, he lucked out in finding such a loyal man. Next, he settled the black jade on the table and released his dark yuan qi. Bam! The stone's exterior cracked and fell, revealing a blood-red light. It was no longer a black jade but a bloody one. Moreover, it gave the impression of a heart as it flashed on and off like heartbeats. I knew it. It's the blood spirit. Zhou Fan swallowed, his face working hard to restrain the obvious delight in his voice. The blood spirit stems from any stone. Its only requirement of formation is to be bathed in the blood of millions of people, absorbing the essence of sun and moon for thousands of years. It would take form. It was a demonic cultivator treasure. Rarest of treasures. A cultivator would use the blood spirit to form a blood infant. In battle, he could send the blood infant to absorb the opponent's blood essence, then kill him. And the blood infant could grow along with the cultivator. Once Zhou Fan grew strong enough, even an emperor wouldn't dare mess with it. According to the 9 Serenities secret records, there was once an ancient demonic cultivator expert, Patriarch Blood Demon, that trained the blood infant to the saint stage. Even the ancient 10 emperors were unwilling to make an enemy out of him. Patriarch Blood Demon felt invincible and went to challenge 9 Serenities Emperor for the title of the strongest demonic cultivator. It was a drawn-out battle, with the 9 Serenities Emperor heavily wounded at the end, barely overcoming the Patriarch Blood Demon by half a move. However, the 9 Serenities Emperor obtained Patriarch Blood Demon's secret method to raise the blood infant, improved it, and added it to the demon transformation art. The 9 Serenities Emperor wanted to train the blood infant too, but never got the chance. Never did he. Zhou Fan, the demonic emperor, think he'd have such a stroke of luck after rebirthing to train the blood infant. If he had it in his past life, a saint would have been nothing. That thought made him eager to slash his wrist and pour his blood onto the blood jade. Plop, plop, just like how an infant breathed. Each drop of blood landed on the stone and disappeared the next instant. The stone started to throb and the sensation only grew stronger with each drop of blood. Zhou Fan smiled viciously and pushed out more blood for the jade. If he wanted to refine the blood infant, he needed to bathe it in his blood until the blood spirit synchronized both their breathing and heartbeat. The seconds trickled by as Zhou Fan's blood thinned, but the blood spirit was never sated, devouring everything he gave. Zhou Fan licked his dried lips, growing paler as his mind was clouded. He knew the loss of blood was too great, but he'd come too far now. There was only one chance to refine the blood infant. If he stopped, it'd be like throwing a child away. It would think Zhou Fan abandoned it and would never approve of him ever again. This was why there was no going back once Zhou Fan started the process. After an hour, Zhou Fan felt the world spinning. If he dared keep this up, it would endanger his life. If his life came at an end, the blood spirit would lose its meaning. Just as he was considering abandoning the process, an indescribable feeling arose in his heart. Zhou Fan was stunned, then overjoyed. His mind and the blood spirit were now connected. He held onto the bloodstone and activated the demon transformation art. Black yuan qi enveloped the stone and strands of blood left it to enter Zhou Fan. Finally, the bloodstone shattered with a loud sound and a red glow shot for his body. Zhou Fan checked in glee and saw the red palm-sized infant resting in his dantian. Sensing his eyes, the infant opened his eyes then went to sleep. This is the blood infant. After a moment of stupefaction, he jumped in joy. He never thought it would be so easy to refine the blood infant. Even though he succeeded, he lost too much blood. When he stood up, his legs went soft and hit the ground. But even that couldn't wipe the grin off his face. Now that I have the blood infant, the next step is to settle on a martial art to learn. Blood palm, a mid-mortal rank martial art. The palm would rain havoc to one's blood and reverse its flow. Thanks to also having the blood infant, it was now savage enough to even damage one's blood essence. Despite a mere mid-mortal rank, its power was as strong as a high mortal rank martial art. It might even surpass it. 10 days later, the door opened with a creak and Zhou Fan came out grinning. Captain Peng rose to his feet and rubbed his eyes. Why did you take so long? Kai Manor already sent someone over. Seeing the dead tired old Peng, Zhou Fan smiled. Old Peng, thank you for your hard work. What hard work between brothers. But we cannot let young miss and young master wait for too long. You're not curious what I've been doing the past 10 days? That is your business. You'll tell me when you want to. Captain Peng waved indifferently, pulling Zhou Fan with haste towards Kai Manor. Zhou Fan was touched seeing this rough man. Despite not knowing each other for long, old Peng had complete trust in him. This never happened for all his life as demonic emperor. They arrived an hour later before a majestic gate with a sign inscribed in golden letters. Kai Manor. Just when they were about to enter, the guards stopped them. Stop. Who are you to dare enter Kai Manor? Captain Peng clasped his hand. I am Luo clan's captain of the guard. Peng Yu. And this is Luo clan's steward. Zhou Fan. My young miss and young master are guests in your home. Zhou Fan was taken aback. Since when did he become the Luo clan's steward? Peng Yu knew what he was thinking and whispered. 8 days ago, Kai clan's men came to say you are Luo clan's steward. Young miss must have done it. Congratulations, brother Zhou. He. Shaking his head out of helplessness, Zhou Fan let out a bitter smile. He didn't want to be some steward, but to entrust the safety of the siblings to the Kai clan and free himself of the heart demon. How could the grand demonic emperor be a puny clan steward? But just as how he looked down on the Luo clan, so did the guards of the Kai Manor. The 2 guards shot a glance filled with contempt. Another 2 showed up to cheat their way to a free meal. Hey, what did you say? Captain Peng was pissed and wanted to argue, but Zhou Fan stopped him. They walked inside. Captain Peng didn't understand. Why did you stop me? Zhou Fan only had a grave expression. These 2 servers' attitude was a reflection of their lords. Nothing good would come out of talking to them. The 2 needed to find Luo Yunchang and understand what was happening. The Kai Manor might not be such a good place to place his trust in. After some inquiry, they arrived at the siblings' dwelling. Seeing the wretched place they lived in, even lower than the tavern rooms, Captain Peng cursed. Why is the Kai clan treating young miss and young master like this? They are even less than guests. Not just that, they don't even consider them humans. Zhou Fan felt anger seething inside. If not because of the siblings' injustice, then because of wasting his time and energy. Let's go in. Zhou Fan rushed next to Captain Peng, who was in a hurry to open the door. Inside, they saw Luo Yunhai sitting on the bed crestfallen. Without his usual enthusiasm, the place was crude, with just a broken chair and a broken table. Captain Peng's eyes teared up. Young master, don't be sad. Kid, where's your sister? Zhou Fan was blunt, with no sympathy. It seemed Zhou Fan's beating casted a shadow on his heart. The lifeless Luo Yunhai shivered and woke up. Luo Yunhai stammered at the raging Zhou Fan. Sister went to look for him. Young Master Kai, to help rebuild the Cloud Manor. Asking for help in this situation is asking for humiliation. Let's go look for your sister. Zhou Fan dragged Luo Yunhai off the bed, his attitude worse than ever. Captain Peng was in a panic, wanting to stop Zhou Fan from being so rude to his master. But Zhou Fan's mood seemed to put him off, and all the courage left him. As such, Luo Yunhai was shaking in fear as he led them. Captain Peng cashed up to them, thinking, just who is the lord here? Next to a clear stream, an elegant man was frolicking with a charming lady in red. They chased each other around the pond, laughing all the while in this peaceful place. Luo Yunchang felt only sorrow as she watched the flirting couple. But for the good of the clan, she braced herself and stepped forward. Brother shouting, the mood of the man turned sour as he glared at her. Luo Yunchang, I thought I made myself clear. From now on, I have nothing more to do with you. My eyes are only for Yufei. Yeah, now get lost. Brother shouting doesn't love you anymore. The lady in red sneered at her, biting her lip. Luo Yunchang's eyes mist over. At the time when Luo and Kai clans were on good terms, the parents of both families arranged their marriage. She and Kai shouting grew up together and swore their love for each other, to never abandon the other. This was why the first person she thought of was her fiancé when she needed help. Yet reality was cruel. Ever since they came here, she and her brother kept suffering while Kai shouting had the arrogant and insufferable Sun clan's young Miss Sun Yufei. Next to him, she knew all hope of marrying into the Kai clan was lost. But for the sake of rebuilding her clan, she hoped to stir clan head Kai's amiable emotions the two clans had in the past and lend a helping hand. Yet clan head Kai Rong was cold and unfeeling to their plight. Not moving an inch, the siblings stayed here for 10 days. All in hope of gaining some assistance. But since Kai Rong ignored her, she could only turn to Kai shouting. Brother shouting, I don't ask for you to go through with the engagement, and only hope you can persuade your father. For old time's sake, and help the Luo clan, it has nothing to do with me. Talk with Dad. Kai shouting waved his sleeve coldly. Luo Yunchang kneeled with tears streaming down her cheeks. Brother shouting, if you don't agree, I will kneel here until I die. Taking a long look at her, Kai shouting frowned and was plagued by hesitation. But then Sun Yufei jumped between them and slapped Luo Yunchang. The blow threw her back and blood trickled from her mouth. Humph, bitch, Kai shouting is mine. Stay away from him. Sun Yufei's phoenix eyes glared and raved. She turned to Kai shouting and said harshly, you stay away from her too. If I find there's still something left between you, I will leave you. As if waking up, he nodded and swore, Yufei, relax, my heart is yours. Other girls are dirt compared to you. Kai shouting's eyes showed his sincere feelings, watching her like a love-struck puppy. Sun Yufei nodded pleased. As Luo Yunchang's face turned ashen, she knew her last hope faded away. Whoosh, a shadow flashed by and 2 slaps echoed. Sun Yufei and Kai shouting were still confused about what happened, when a red handprint appeared on their faces. Zhuo Yifan stood in front of Luo Yunchang as he stared at them. A damn illicit couple dares to ruin my affairs? Who are you? Sun Yufei and Kai shouting woke up with a start. They were geniuses of Windgaze City, qi condensation experts, and peerless in their generation. Yet here was Zhuo Yifan, of similar age yet faster than even them. They got slapped before they could react. Is it possible for such an individual to exist in this world? As the scene played out, only Captain Peng and Luo Yunhai came to Luo Yunchang's help. Seeing the thin figure in front, Captain Peng was even more shocked, although he was an expert in the 4th layer of qi condensation, while Kai shouting was in the 3rd, a level beneath him. They had different upbringings, and if they clashed, he might even lose. Yet such arrogant geniuses were slapped by Zhuo Yifan. Thinking about the power he displayed in the forest, Captain Peng couldn't help but wonder how he got so strong in such a short span of time. Ignoring the two and the shocked Captain Peng, Zhuo Yifan turned to the crying and pitiful Luo Yunchang and felt pain in his heart. Wretched heart demon, Zhuo Yifan gnashed his teeth. With his demonic emperor disposition, he could look beyond the world's entire sufferings. How could a girl's humiliation ever cause him pain? He could only attribute it to this body's former soul, who felt anger for his master. It looks like I'll be stuck with the Luo clan for some time. Zhuo Yifan sighed inside as he wiped Luo Yunchang's tears. Let's go. Luo Yunchang nodded. There was no point in staying here. She carried the bitter Luo Yunhai and walked with Captain Peng's help. Humph, don't think you can run after hitting us. Sun Yufei shrieked as she barred their way. Kai Shouting chimed in. Luo Yunchang, you think this is a place you can come and go as you please? Luo Yunchang was filled with grief and balled her fists. She regretted ever coming here for help. Facing this overbearing couple in their home, she could only rein in her anger. If she were alone, she would have rather fight them for her honor. But she still had her brother. If he died, she would be too ashamed to meet her parents in the underworld river. What do you want? Luo Yunchang's voice trembled. Humph. Simple. Kneel and kowtow 3 times. Sun Yufei smiled viciously and pointed at Zhou Fan. Especially him. Clenching his teeth, Captain Pang's eyes went red, wanting nothing more than to beat them senseless. This was too humiliating. Luo Yunchang hesitated, then closed her eyes as her knees bent. Kneel, all of you. They could all hear her faint mournful voice. Sun Yufei stuck out her chin with arrogance and smiled with pride. Bam! Before they kneeled, Sun Yufei and Kai Shouting took the initiative to kneel first with a cry. Rather saying they kneeled, it was better to say their knees were forcibly smacked onto the pavement. Cracks spread like spiderwebs on the pavement. If they weren't qi condensation experts, their knees would be crushed. Unable to walk again, the two grimaced as they looked up to see Zhou Fan standing before them. You again. The couple knew Zhou Fan was the only one among the group who had the power to attack them out of the blue. Even if you beg on your knees now, I won't ever let you go. Sun Yufei glared scornfully at Zhou Fan, howling with rage. Paw, paw. 2 hits echoed and Zhou Fan kicked them without hesitation. You want me to kneel? You think too highly of yourselves. Sun Yufei and Kai Shouting were dumbfounded, even forgetting the pain from the kick. Slapping them to help Luo Yunchang out of a predicament was something they could understand. To make amends, they were ordered to kneel. Yet, the steward still had the guts to strike them. Was he not afraid they would never be allowed to leave Kai Manor alive? Captain Pang was enraged by the two's act, but he looked at it from a different perspective and felt it was better to endure. Or the Luo clan would be perishing here. Luo Yunchang smiled dejectedly. Others didn't understand Zhou Fan, while she gained first-hand knowledge of his violent character in the forest. He never once acted like a servant. He just did whatever he wanted. She just could not cope with the fact their Luo clan had such a servant. Yet, Luo Yunhai's attitude changed completely. He now looked at Zhou Fan with worship and adoration. This damnable slave's nerve that always bullied him wasn't limited to picking on his masters, but even on others. He just didn't know fear. In that instant, the image of the damnable slave turned into an almighty hero coming to rescue the Luo clan. Who dares to act impertinently in the Kai clan's domain? A man's rebuke echoed as he appeared before them. Luo Yunchang's face dropped. She pulled her brother so close that even he could feel her anxiety. Kai Shouting was overjoyed. Dad, you're here. He is looking for trouble with our Kai clan. Knowing clan head Kai Rong came, Zhou Fan eyed him more carefully. Kai Rong looked to be in his 50s, tall and sturdy, and a powerful aura emanating from him. 8th layer of bone tempering. Smiled Zhou Fan. Kai Rong's eyebrows jumped as shock flashed over his face. He never thought possible for a youth to see through his cultivation. Good eyes, patronized Kai Rong. May I ask who you are? Luo clan's steward, Zhou Fan. Kai Rong was startled and observed him closely. He heard from Luo Yunchang that Luo clan had a new steward, since the old one turned traitor. But he didn't think it'd be one as young as Zhou Fan. And he also gave off a strange energy. If it were any other time, a fox like him would never mess with an unknown variable like Zhou Fan. Such a pity there was now a power in this city he could offend even less. Uncle Kai, you must bring justice to us victims. Sun Yufei revealed the red print on her face while glaring at Zhou Fan. Kai Rong understood the situation in an instant. He placated her. Don't worry, Uncle Kai is here now. He then turned solemn as he looked at Luo Yunchang. Yunchang, I took you, siblings, out of kindness. It is fine if you do not reciprocate. But why look for trouble? Luo Yunchang shuddered, lost for words. Zhou Fan stepped forward with a smile. You even bully a lady at your age. Clan head Kai, I needn't say anything more. Moreover, stop preaching kindness. No need to mince words. You did it out of benefit. Or you wouldn't have annulled the marriage. All right. Since you want us to be hostile, I won't be lenient. Kai Rong's face changed. Today, I will have to settle this for you, Fei. You need only handle my palm attack. I won't take advantage of you and only use 2/10. Let life and death be decided like this. 2/10? As his pupils shrunk, Captain Pang shouted. Coming from you, it's even stronger than a 9th layer qi condensation expert's all-out attack. You clearly want us dead. Uncle Kai, I beg you. Yunhai is still a child. He is innocent, Yunchang implored, but Kai Rong snorted, then smiled at Sun Yufei. All right, I'll go first. Zhou Fan's mouth perked up. Whoosh! A great red palm appeared in the air. Kai Rong didn't expect for Zhou Fan to attack first and turned serious as he sent his own palm attack. At contact, the blood palm scattered and Zhou Fan fell back 10 steps. Yet was unharmed. A 2nd layer qi condensation can withstand 2/10 of my power. Kai Rong's heart was in shock. But your survival all came down to luck. HHHA. The only reason I'm still alive is because I don't believe in luck. And he pointed at Kai Rong's hand with a grin. But power. Kai Rong's eyes squinted. His hand was bleeding from the previous exchange. How could this be? He is just a 2nd layer qi condensation cultivator while I am an 8th layer bone tempering cultivator. That's a whole stage difference. Furthermore, followed Zhou Fan. You really think that was 2/10? That wasn't even a 10th. Kai Rong began to recall what transpired. Despite the abruptness of it all, he indeed wanted to release 2/10. But when he released the palm, his blood fell in disorder and the result was obvious to all. Also, take a look at your son. Zhou Fan pointed at Kai shouting. Kai Rong saw his son spat a mouthful of blood. Dad, what's happening? Kai shouting panicked. He wasn't wounded yet he puked blood. Zhou Fan, what the hell did you do? Kai Rong roared. Zhou Fan replied with a sneer. I only wanted to tell clan head Kai I can take your son's life anytime. Please take it into consideration. As Kai Rong was hesitating, Zhou Fan pointed again, eliciting another mouth of blood from Kai shouting. All right, I believe you. Kai Rong wiped his brow of sweat as he spoke in a shaky voice. He didn't know what trick he pulled on his son, but Zhou Fan was prepared for his intervention. He was now regretting. If he knew the Luo clan had such a shrewd and decisive steward, he wouldn't have taken things this far. Then, I will bid you farewell here. Clan head Kai. Zhou Fan sneered as he cupped his hands then pulled Luo Yunchang and walked away. Zhou Fan laughed all the while. Today you love to bully me. Tomorrow you'll be beneath me. Uncle Kai, are you letting him go? Sun Yufei said with resentment. Sighing helplessly, Kai Rong muttered as he watched Zhou Fan leave. Instead of offering shelter, I invited an enemy. Shaking his head, he helped Kai shouting walk inside. After a few steps, his eyes flashed as he turned to Sun Yufei. Yufei, we need to end Zhou Fan as soon as possible. He will endanger your Sun clan. Humph, you don't dare to attack him because of your son. My Sun clan isn't afraid. I will let him have a taste of what it means to offend the 7 noble houses. Sun Yufei spoke with hatred. As the 3 left Kai Manor, Captain Peng and Luo Yunchang were trembling and even looked back now and then for fear of Kai Rong having changed his mind. Only Zhou Fan was calm. Yet a bit of rage still existed in his heart. Young miss, is there anywhere else we can go? Zhou Fan asked in a cold tone. Her eyes turned misty as she shook her head. Captain Pang also signed in sorrow. Taking a deep breath, Zhou Fan gnashed his teeth and promised himself to run the Kai clan into the ground one day. He was just a step away from providing a safe haven for the Luo siblings. Yet Kai clan's father and son ruined it all. If the day came that the Kai clan was ruined because they offended Zhou Fan, Kai Rong would be twisting inside with regret. But that was the future. Now, Zhou Fan was pissed. His hopes were dashed and he had to spend more time to look after the siblings. Zhou Fan mumbled for a while, then said, Young miss, do you know what are the 7 noble houses? What? Where did you hear that from? Luo Yunchang was in a panic as she watched Zhou Fan. It was as if he knew a heavenly secret. But recalling the fantastic events that happened the past days, she relaxed. Captain Pang also looked oddly at Luo Yunchang. This was the first time he heard of them. Pursing her lips for a long time, Luo Yunchang finally spoke in a solemn tone. Since we lived in Cloud Manor and had no dealings with them, not knowing them is normal. But we are now wandering outside. If you ever meet someone from the 7 noble houses, you must avoid him, even if it's a dog. Captain Pang was shocked. This was his first time seeing Luo Yunchang speaking on such a heavy tone, as if she was talking about horrifying people. Yet, a proud girl like her, even if from a fallen clan, did not speak near as highly about the Kai clan. The warning seemed to go right past Zhou Fan as he retained his calm. Be it Luo clan or Kai clan, regardless of how strong they are only mortal clans. But in Tianyu Empire, there are 7 officials who earned the imperial family's approval and can stand next to the emperor. Their power and territory are above all mortal clans. Fighting them is like going against the empire. What? This world has clans that can stand next to the imperial family? Captain Peng's face contorted in fear. Luo Yunchang nodded with extreme seriousness. Every clan knows these 7 families must not be touched. I am telling you this so that you all must remember to be careful. Is the Sun clan one of them? Interrupted Zhou Fan. Stunned for a second, Luo Yunchang shook her head. Why do you ask? Yeah, brother Zhou, if she was of the 7 houses, then young miss would have stopped you from smacking her. Captain Peng snickered. Since Luo Yunchang didn't stop him, then she agreed in silence. As if she was found out, Luo Yunchang reddened and glared at him. In fact, seeing Sun Yufei slapped was the most refreshing event for Luo Yunchang. Since Captain Peng could tell how glad the girl was, how could Zhou Fan not? But Zhou Fan's vision was much further. Even if they had a falling out with the Sun clan, he had to understand the other's background. Then is the Sun clan part of the 7 houses? What made you come to that conclusion? Luo Yunchang was feeling nervous for some reason. Her only hope right now was that Zhou Fan was joking around to scare her. But his next words were spoken with a straight face. That girl raved how she'll let us see the might of the 7 noble houses. How can this be? Did we offend 7 noble houses people? Luo Yunchang paled and her mind blanked. Watching Zhou Fan with empty eyes, Captain Pang was even worse. His heart froze up. At this moment, the world seemed to have vanished. Making way for silence, Zhou Fan, quick, we need to apologize to young Miss Sun. Luo Yunchang pulled him to Kai Manor. But Zhou Fan was stuck like a rock. If we go, we'll die, Zhou Fan said coldly. Luo Yunchang froze and her eyes glazed with helplessness. Zhou Fan's words were ear-piercing, but they all spoke of the harsh truth. If offending the 7 noble houses was so easily settled, no one would have regarded them with such fear. Brother Zhou, what do we do? They were all surprised to find Luo Yunhai speaking as he gazed at Zhou Fan with unshakable faith. Not even Zhou Fan foresaw it. A kid that everyone overlooked was now watching him with such big and innocent eyes. Wasn't I a stinkin' slave? Squinted Zhou Fan. Big bro Zhou, we, brother and sister, are grateful for this new chance at life. You're our greatest benefactor, my dear brother-in-law. Please save us once again. Yunhai, don't talk nonsense. Luo Yunhai glared with a red face. Yet her eyes couldn't help sneaking a glance at Zhou Fan. They were alive thanks to him. Despite being inferior in his eyes, Zhou Fan's abilities made others have a whole new level of respect for him. This was the reason why she appointed him as the clan's steward. For the rebuilding of the clan, men like him were needed. Zhou Fan saw Luo Yunhai's imploring eyes and laughed inside. This kid is a clan's son after all. Haughty but also clever to see another's talent, how adorable. Moreover, helping the Luo clan was a given for him. Does Windgaze City have men from the 7 houses? Yes, the Veiled Dragon Pavilion, the #1 treasure appraising clan among the 7 houses. Its wealth knows no bounds. Then let's return to the tavern and go to Veiled Dragon Pavilion tomorrow. Zhou Fan ruffled Luo Yunhai's head. What for? Luo Yunchang rushed to ask. Allies. Zhou Fan's curt reply came. The others were stunned. Why would one of the 7 noble houses, the Veiled Dragon Pavilion, ally with a rundown clan? That was more of the wish of a hopeless loser. A tens of meters tall ancient building stood in the eastern part of Windgaze City. Its size overwhelmed any from approaching to the point that not a single person dared get within 100 meters of it. 2 guards in golden garb stood at the gates. Their aura gave off the impression of veterans, of imperial bodyguards. Despite standing still, their eyes roamed everywhere, staring daggers at any who dared match their gaze. But in this place, 4 people suddenly appeared. Peak of chi condensation, Zhuo Yifan muttered as he walked in front of the siblings and Captain Peng. While he had no problem facing such imposing guards, the 3 stiffened, to the point they almost forgot to walk. Stop, the guards barred Zhuo Yifan's path. Veiled Dragon Pavilion is not a place for you to wonder about. I ask that you send word of Cloud Manor Luo clan's young miss. Luo Yunchong, I have arrived to have something appraised. Zhuo Yifan's eyes didn't even look at them. The 2 exchanged a look of surprise. Windgaze City didn't lack people who came here to see the appraiser. But all were fearful and fawned them when talking. This was a first though. Meeting such a smug kid. We've never heard of you. Our appraiser can't meet with nobodies, spoke a guard harshly. Luo Yunchong lowered her head. One of the 7 noble houses. Veiled Dragon Pavilion. Would never pay attention to an ant-like clan. They weren't even worthy to speak with them. Not to mention become allies. Zhuo Yifan, Luo Yunchong pulled Zhuo Yifan. But before she could finish, he shook her off. That is the appraiser's concern to see us. Try and act as the servants you are. What did you say? The guards were outraged. Releasing their full aura, the Luo clan members felt their breathing become heavier as they retreated back. Only Zhuo Yifan stood in his place and roared. Is this how the 7 noble houses treats its guests? Humph, truly renowned. Stop. A girl in white came out to meet them. The guards bowed. Young miss, these people are looking for trouble. I heard what you said. And it is you who are in the wrong. All who come are guests. Make sure to show respect. The girl berated them in a cold tone. Then smiled at Zhuo Yifan. Mister, we meet again. It's you? Zhuo Yifan and Captain Peng were startled. She was the one that quarreled with the stall owner. But things were different now. Zhuo Yifan sneered inside. I didn't expect for young miss to be from the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. Please forgive my lack of respect. The girl nodded with a smile. I am Long Kui, only a small appraiser here. I wonder why Mr. has come to us. To be honest, I am Luo clan's steward. Zhuo Yifan, because a terrible misfortune plagues us. I accompanied my young miss to the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. The number 1 appraising noble house in Tianyu Empire's number 1 appraising noble house. To sell the clan's treasure. Eyes flashing. Long Kui smiled when she saw Luo Yunchong nodding. Then turned back to Zhuo Yifan. Then I will do my best to examine your treasure. Please, follow me. She showed them in, to the shock of the guards. Was that, young miss friend? No way. How can young miss have such a dirt poor friend? She must be doing it for the treasure. Once it fails to meet her expectations, they will be kicked out. Then, we will teach them a lesson they won't ever forget. Especially that rude Zhuo Yifan. But what if the item is to her liking? That's impossible. Just look at them. How can these wretched people have anything that is worth more than black jade? The other also jeered, rubbing his hand in eagerness to vent all his energy. On the other side, Long Kui took them to a flourishing room and smiled once they were seated. I wonder what treasure did you bring? Please take it out. Zhuo Yifan grinned. This girl thinks herself above others. But is quite shrewd as well. He was certain she knew exactly what went on at the entrance. But let the guards test them if they were worthy of her time. If they showed any sign of giving up, her current attitude would have been unyielding. Despite how cunning she was far too naive when up against the devilish Zhuo Yifan. Whoosh! Zhuo Yifan placed a scroll with countless images before her, which immediately caught her full attention. Taking it in her hands, Long Kui took careful and long looks at the contents. Luo Yunchong and Captain Peng were in a bit of a shock. This drawing was something Zhuo Yifan made last night. When they saw it, they only had one thought. What is this thing? Yet from the looks of Long Kui's expression, it must be worth a fortune. Mr. Zhuo Yifan, how much do you want? Long Kui placed the scroll back and watched Zhuo Yifan with a hardened gaze. Young Miss Long is an appraiser and saw your skill in the market. Please be the first to state a price. Zhuo Fan chuckled, biting her lip. Long Kui noticed from his eyes that this man was also knowledgeable. She couldn't swindle him. How does 20,000 spirit stones sound? What, 20,000? Luo Yunchang stood up in shock. If you'd take Cloud Manor's wealth when it was at its peak, you'd get 50,000. Yet Zhou Fan messed around with a brush and came up with 20? Captain Pang was dumbstruck. Long Kui couldn't restrain her disdain for the two. Humph, I am a madam while you are a pack of stray cats. But when she saw the silent yet smiling Zhou Fan, she turned serious. The true expert is this steward. 20,000. HHHA. Zhou Fan rubbed his chin, shaking his head as he reached for the scroll. Since young Miss Long isn't honest, there's no need to continue. Her body moved back and hugged the scroll, afraid Zhou Fan might take it. Mr. Zhao, 20,000 isn't little for a first-grade array. And this is a drawing instead of a jade slip. This price of mine is fair. HHHA. Young Miss Long, I might not be too learned, but I know when you try to cheat me. Give me the scroll. Zhou Fan reached out but was in no rush to take it as he stared down at her, tightening her grip on the drawing. Long Kui bit her lip and shouted, "Take it as my loss." 30,000. Young Miss Long still is not honest enough. Zhou Fan shook his head in disappointment and leaned over to grab for the scroll. Long Kui curled backward, wanting to dodge Zhou Fan's evil clutches. This drawing was indeed a first-grade array. And this wasn't the first time she saw one. Her original price was quite fair and began with 20,000 because she knew she couldn't swindle the knowledgeable Zhou Fan. But even so, with how many arrays were out there, she didn't know them all. The number one appraising noble house in the empire had many arrays in storage. Yet this was a rare chance for her to encounter one that was unlike any she saw before. As such, even if she would lose out, she would do all she could to have this array. A pity that the relentless Zhou Fan stood in her way, unwilling to back down even half a step. As such, she turned to the ignored young miss of the Luo clan. Young Miss Luo, this drawing is 30,000 at most. Only the Veiled Dragon Pavilion has the wealth to buy such a drawing in the entire empire. You won't gain a better price elsewhere. She hesitated and glanced at Zhou Fan. Long Kui knew she had an escape and pushed her advantage to entice her. Young Miss Luo, you and the Veiled Dragon Pavilion are making a great transaction and will become our honored guest. Our doors will forever be open to you. Honored guest? Luo Yunchang mumbled. Isn't this gaining a supporter? Her heart was overtaken with joy and turned to Zhou Fan. What if? Not a word. Zhou Fan roared and glared at her. This foolish woman was swayed in seconds. How could the Veiled Dragon Pavilion stick their heads out for some bullshit guests? To get the best of their power, to have their protection, they could only attain it through a trade of equals. Young Miss Long, I am Luo clan's steward, in charge of all matters concerning it. Please return the drawing. Zhou Fan's smile was replaced by a cold stare. Luo Yunchang looked in a daze, first at him then at Luo Yunchang. Though his words rang true. Since when did a steward's power superseded his lord's? How was he the steward? By the look of things, the lady of Luo clan is unable to keep the steward in check. Sighing, Long Kui was very reluctant in giving the scroll back, evident by her slow movement. Such a pity. Mr. Zhou Fan, your request is too high and I can't fulfill it, but I am willing to guarantee on our Veiled Dragon Pavilion's fame that this first-grade array won't go beyond 30,000. With the scroll in hand, Zhou Fan rose from his seat and leaned closer to Long Kui, leaving her flabbergasted. Before she could say anything, he said, "Sorry, it seems I thought too highly of the young miss. You truly don't understand. Does this place have any other appraiser?" What? I do not understand? Long Kui's cheeks were tinted red as her heart swelled with anger. No item that passed her hands hadn't received a correct assessment. The fact she could point out the fake black jade, yet unable to explain why, was her talent. It was because of this that she rose to a top-rated appraiser. In short, she was an expert. Yet, here came Zhou Fan mocking her talent, refuting her skill in appraising. It was worse than any physical attack, an insult to her dignity. Mr. Zhou Fan, your eyes are not wrong. But it is best not to overreach. Long Kui showed a smile that went beyond just anger. All of them could hear the gnashing of her teeth. Yet Zhou only smiled. Is there any other appraiser here? Long Kui glared. Fine, just wait here. And she left. Luo Yunchang was worried about the anger Long Kui showed. Did we offend the veiled dragon pavilion? Zhou Fan shook his head with an unusual smile. Moments later, Long Kui appeared again with steady steps. But this time, an old man was at her side. Godai Long Ju? Luo Yunchang shouted in shock and turned to Zhou Fan. He is the supervisor of the Veiled Dragon Pavilion in Windgaze City. The head appraiser. Godai Long Ju. Ah, it's Luo clan's young miss. Even from 100 steps. Long Ju's voice resounded clearly in their ears. I've met your father 20 years ago. He was full of metal then. I didn't expect for your clan to sell their treasure. Zhou Fan's heart shivered as his brows knitted. This man's power was a cut above Kai Rong's. To the point not even Zhou Fan could see through him. It wasn't that his eyesight were poor, or the fact the old man hid his power. The difference between them was just too deep. I see. So Veiled Dragon Pavilion has such an expert, thought Zhou Fan. Soon, Long Ju was supported by Long Kui and arrived before them. Luo Yunchang bowed. Grandpa Ju. The others were quick to follow. Yet Zhou Fan just stood there. Long Ju sized him up with his only hazy eye. Are you Luo clan's steward? Yes. All right. Anyone's better than that old son. Long Ju shot a meaningful glance at them. Then sat down. I heard you doubt little Kui's skill. Yes. Zhou Fan didn't mince words, eliciting a snort from her and a roll of the eye. HHHA. Little Kui might be new in this line of business. But her eyes are true. She must be more or less right with her assessment. But since you doubt her, this blind old man will take a look. Please. Zhou Fan offered the scroll. The Long Ju's smile vanished when he turned to its contents. Staring intently at it, Uncle Ju, wasn't I right? Long Kui grinned and shouted. First grade array. 30,000 spirit stones. Long Ju kept staring at the drawing and only after a while did he spoke with a solemn face. I never thought the Luo clan would hide such a thing. Kid, what do you think of 1.8 million spirit stones? What? They all went slack-jawed. Long Kui in particular. Never had she dreamed of the day the supervisor of Veiled Dragon Pavilion, Long Ju, would utter such an astronomical number. Uncle Ju. Long Kui watched Long Ju wide-eyed, who instead watched the calm Zhou Fan with his only eye. Zhou Fan gazed back with a grin. Too low. They all cried out in response. 1.8 million was an inconceivable wealth for the Luo clan. Luo Yunchang never dreamed of having such riches. Yet in the eyes of Zhou Fan, it wasn't enough. Luo Yunchang and Captain Pang looked lost at him. If not for being born and raised in the Cloud Manor, they'd be thinking he was a noble descendant. His gaze traveled so far, yet before others could recover from Zhou Fan's attack, here came Long Ju's reply. I understand, but this is the most this old man can give. Then I'll sell it as a favor for Grandpa Ju at this price. Luo Yunchang chuckled embarrassingly as she wiped her brow. She never imagined a random drawing from Zhou Fan would garner such an insane price that took all of Godai Long Ju's wealth to pay for it. And by the looks of it, Long Ju seemed to have set his sights on it. As such, it was better to earn his favor and be on good terms with Veiled Dragon Pavilion. Long Ju showed a gratified smile, as expected, being extra careful as he rolled the drawing. But then, Zhou Fan slapped the table. Since you can't go higher, the deal is off. Zhou Fan. Luo Yunchang gave him a look, but he ignored her as he reached for the scroll. Squinting his eyes, Long Ju unleashed his awe-inspiring power. Kid, this old man wants it. Under such tremendous pressure, everyone recoiled. While Luo Yunchang and Captain Pang were overwhelmed from shock, Long Ju was far above Kai Rong. Offending him would be tantamount to instant death. Yet, Zhou held his own under the man's power and even sneered. Grandpa Ju, you're staining Veiled Dragon Pavilion's reputation. Kid, are you not afraid? Long Ju kicked his power up a notch. Humph, aren't you? Blanking out for a second, Long Ju took back his power and laughed. HHHA. Good kid. With you in charge of the Luo clan, they have nothing to worry about. The others were baffled. The two were a step away from jumping at each other's throat, and in the next instant all went up in smoke. Yet, no one knew the two moved the battle from brawn to mind. Long Zhu released his power to soften Zhou Fan into selling him the drawing. Instead, Zhou Fan pushed through the pressure and asked the old man about his honor. Veiled Dragon Pavilion was the #1 appraising house among the 7 nobles. If this coercion leaked, then the damage would be unimaginable. Zhou Fan bet on his fate and the clan's honor's place in Long Zhu's heart and won. With a deep look directed at Zhou Fan, Long Zhu took the direct approach. "Kid, I know you didn't come just to sell this drawing. What are your terms?" Grinning, Zhou Fan pushed the drawing before Long Zhu. 10 million is a fair offer. Let's start by having you pay us 1 million and the rest. Slowly, that's. Long Zhu eyed the scroll, then nodded after a while. All right, until the debt is paid. The Veiled Dragon Pavilion shall owe Luo clan. Long Zhu took the scroll and left. Yet once he was gone, his voice lingered. Little Kui, give them 1 million spirit stones and walk them out. Yes. Long Kui was overwhelmed with different thoughts, as she had never seen Long Zhu with such a sour expression. Turning back to Zhou Fan, it was the first time she saw him sporting such a content smile. Next, she handed 1 million spirit stones and saw them out. At the gate, the 2 guards were eager for them to show up and teach them a thing or two. But Long Kui's respectful attitude threw a wrench in their plans. And when they heard the deal they made included 1 million spirit stones, they were stunned. Never had they imagined a remote place like this could come with such an important deal. It became one of the top 3 deals in Veiled Dragon Pavilion's history. Damn, thank God we didn't do anything or disaster might have struck. A guard watched the 4 leave and wiped the sweat off his brow. The other just bobbed his head. Veiled Dragon Pavilion treated a rich clan with respect. If any of their men dared to offend the clan, the noble house would exact punishment. In the case of a clan with 1 million spirit stones, the guards' complete lack of courtesy would even end with their deaths. Thinking about it, they began to sweat buckets. On the other hand, Long Kui returned to Long Zhu, who was now looking at every detail of the first-grade array. Uncle Zhu, isn't it just a first-grade array? How is this worth 10 million? I never even seen an item worth that much. Long Kui asked the moment she went through the door. Sighing, Long Zhu gestured to her next to him. Little Kui, look closer. This might be the only one of its kind in the empire. This is. Long Kui's eyes flashed with shock. An ancient array. Long Zhu showed how moved he was with every word. The ancient arrays are a lost art. Yet this has essentially proven their existence. It is priceless. And even 10 million is too low. What? It's that valuable? Nodding, Long Zhu revealed a childish smile, as if he got his most cherished toy. But something occurred to him that soured his mood. Little Kui, tell Ajia to find 5 experts and watch over the Luo clan. They offended the Sun clan today. Why should we help them? Long Zhu snorted. Haven't you been listening? We owe them. Long Kui began to recall. So this is what Zhou Fan and Long Zhu were haggling over. Yet, the veteran Uncle Zhu was defeated in negotiations by a pup. Of course he was in a bad mood. Long Kui couldn't help but let out a giggle.